bruh, bruh, bruh. Hey kids, remember when you used to wake up early for Saturday morning cartoons and your biggest worries in life were whether or not the princess was in this or another castle? Let's go back there, because it's Throwback Thursday. Well, hey there, everybody. So, my favorite sport of all time is back in action. The regular season just started up for NHL hockey, and I loves me some hockey. Absolutely do. Always have. Always have. Even though I grew up in a place that had no hockey team at first when I was growing up, and then they got one, and then they showed no actual dedication to this state or to any of the cities that they played in this state, and now they no longer exist. And as far as I'm concerned, will no longer exist. Even if, because people are like, oh, they might come back if it doesn't work out this season in that other place they allegedly went to. No, in my book, they're just dead to me. The Phoenix Coyotes, the Arizona Coyotes, dead to me. Yeah, that's right. Because they've treated us so horribly. Real quick, let me declare my team allegiances, and then we'll get moving on, because this matters to me quite a bit. I've been a Maple Leafs fan since I was a kid. Yeah, I know. I know how you feel about Maple Leafs fans, if you also are a hockey fan. And sorry, I made that decision when I was like 12. My second choice was the Calgary Flames, and they are officially now my Western Conference team that I will root for. Used to root for that team from Arizona, but they no longer exist. Yeah, they fell off the face of the earth. Anyway, regardless. But I care about my hockey very, very deeply. And back in the day, we had very few avenues for it. You know, I played roller hockey because that was the only kind of hockey I could play. The closest rink to me was like 2.5 hours away. So even though I logged as much ice time as I could at that rink that was 2.5 hours away, that meant that I visited it like once a year. So yeah, didn't get a lot of ice time growing up. And yeah, video game wise, there are some not great hockey games. And then there's Blades of Steel, which is another level. And now I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, hey, isn't there that ice hockey game by Nintendo? Yeah, that exists. It's also an inferior product. If I want to play ice hockey with Fat Mario, Big Nose Luigi, and the janky Mario from the Mario Maker games, yeah, then I play ice hockey with its inferior controls, inferior gameplay in every sense of the term. When compared with Blades of Steel, that's just how it is. So, anyway, what is it about Blades of Steel that makes it so much better than everything else that was out at the time? Well, is one thing, and one thing really. It's the same thing that EA Sports used to pride itself on, is that if it's in the game, it's in the game. You know, like that's the whole EA Sports. It's in the game. Like that's where that comes from, is that if it's in the game, it's in the game. Meaning that if it's a part of the sport, that they try to make sure that it's a part of the video game version as well. And Blades of Steel brought a bit of realism to the hockey because, you know, ice hockey is kind of clownish. The characters are goofy and arcadish, and it reminds me of like the Backyard Sports franchise, which people tell me is good, but like, I'm sorry, I can't get into it. When I'm playing sports games, I want to pretend that these are the actual teams I care about, all of which will never win championships in my lifetime. Yeah, that's right. The two sports I care about the most are hockey and basketball, and my teams are the Toronto Maple Leafs and now the Calgary Flames in the Western Conference. And then my NBA allegiances forever will be given to the Phoenix Suns. And yeah, the NBA just does not ever want them to win a championship. They'll do whatever they can, have the refs bet on the games, you know, let cheap shot Robert Horry body check Steve Nash into the scorer's table and then give Suns players the suspensions. Anyway, yeah, still bitter about that. Still absolutely bitter about that. And I think I have a right. Anyway, regardless, let's not get off into the weeds about my sporting allegiances. But yeah, all of my teams will never win championships. They never do. People told me when I declared at the beginning of the season, I'm like, that's it. I'm rooting for the Flames. And people were like, they're going to be bottom 5. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't need you to tell me that. Like, as if I haven't rooted for a team that couldn't win before. Like, come on. Uh, anyway, regardless, Blades of Steel, back to the point. I want realism. I want to be able to pretend that the team that I care about is playing and that I'm able to take them to a championship. That's what I want when I'm playing a game. And I want it to feel as real as possible so that I can, suspend my disbelief and be like, oh my God, this is what it would feel like if the Maple Leafs had won a championship anytime other than 1967. Yeah, it's been a few years. It's been a few years. Not in my lifetime have they won a Stanley Cup. And it's not looking, well, I don't know. It's looking maybe okay. Goaltending is important in the playoffs. And I don't know. We're just rolling out 3 backups, honestly, and one of them's injured now. Our number 1 backup is injured. So, hooray, hooray, hurrah. Again, let's not get sidetracked in real hockey. Let's talk about video game hockey. So, Blades of Steel brings the realism in a way that no other hockey game at the time did. And as a matter of fact, it's an actual improvement upon what was actually happening on the ice back in the day. And I'll explain that in a bit. But here's the fun thing. So first thing you're greeted with is the game saying with voice synthesis, Blades of Steel. And then you're off and into the game. And there is voice synthesis for certain things. They'll tell you when it's a face-off, when it's a fight. And they'll talk about, pass or shot or whatever. Just a few things that they'll say. And yeah, there's like half a dozen phrases that the voice synthesis will say. But we didn't have a lot of voice synthesis at this point, and so it made it feel more real. The other thing is that while there are no actual NHL teams in the game, all of the cities represented had NHL teams at the time. And the colors of the teams in Blades of Steel are oddly reminiscent of the NHL teams. I mean, Toronto, they're still rocking blue, but it's like light blue and dark blue. They kind of look like the Kraken. Montreal looks like puke, so that's normal. Yeah, got it with the rivalry. Anyway, regardless, but most of those teams look like their actual NHL counterpart, and so the ability of a person like myself to play the game and be like, okay, this is my team playing for the Stanley Cup. You have 2 game modes. There's exhibition and tournament. Tournament is, like a playoff, and you get to play the playoffs and then win the cup, pretty much, except for they can't actually use the Stanley Cup and all of that stuff, but you can imagine. And so all of that is good. And a lot of the things that you would find in hockey are in this game. You have passing and shooting and body checking. And there are penalties for slashing and hooking, which if you're, because you push the check button or the defense button, really, because it does all of your defense, body checking, stick checking, slashing, hooking, the important stuff. And it'll also get you into a fight if you body check the same guy too many times. And the interesting thing is that what I first thought was the fight animation was not actually, because it goes to this pre-fight animation. So I guess you're like, giving each other the old face wash with the gloves, setting up for a fight. And the first time I saw that animation, I wasn't prepared for it, and I didn't button mash, and so I lost. And I was like, oh, I just lost a fight. Nope. The fights actually go to a different screen, and you duke it out. It is way easier to get into fights in this game than in real hockey, and there are no real consequences for it. Nobody goes to the penalty box. It doesn't seem to make any difference whatsoever. As a matter of fact, in real hockey, when you win a fight, like let's say you're down a goal or two and the team's kind of feeling down, you go out there, you drop the gloves on the biggest guy on their team, and you rough him up something good. That's going to get your team back in the game. It is an emotional boost to your team to have that kind of a situation. And so, yeah, it is a part of the game. People always wonder, like, but do they really need fighting in hockey? Yes, they do. Not as much as, Don Cherry wants, but like, he likes that old, hard-nosed hockey over there. But Don Cherry also believes that all European-born players are wussies, and yeah, he's got a lot. And my favorite player all time, Matt Sundin, is the first European player to be taken number 1 in the draft. So, what are you gonna do? And he had a glorious career, all great except for he never won a Stanley Cup. That, yeah, of course he never did. He plays for Toronto anyway. Regardless, the point is that the fighting is fun, but it's a little bit excessive. Um, but yeah, there are regular penalties and things, and the game goes to a shootout if it's tied at the end. So that actually predicted where hockey went, because back in the day, you just have a tie, you know, because that's what you had. You had a tie at the end of it. So hockey standings would be reported with wins, losses, and ties, and that's how standings were determined. And so, because you get 2 points for a win, nothing for a loss, and 1 point for a tie. You know, simple as that. And so, yeah, that used to be the way. And then they decided, like, hey, let's not have ties because Americans don't like it very much. They took the ties away and they replaced it with a 5-minute overtime followed by a shootout. This game goes directly to a shootout, and that's awesome. You know, predicted where the game was going to go. Another way in which they predicted where the game was going to go is the 2-line pass. Now, you know a little bit of hockey to know about this. Back in the day, there was a thing called the 2-line pass rule, and if you know your hockey, there are 3 lines in the center of the ice. Two blue lines, which indicate the neutral zone, and a red line, which indicates the center line. That's where the puck gets dropped at the beginning of a game and after each scored goal, and at the beginning of every period. Anyway, so, yeah, center line, that's what that's for. The other blue lines indicate the neutral zone, and then across the blue line on each side is the each team's defending zone. And you cannot enter how offside works in hockey. You can't enter the offensive zone ahead of the puck. So that's just how that works. But back in the day, they had a thing called the 2-line pass, which was an offside pass, which was if the puck crosses 2 lines to get to a player, it's illegal. And it really made things boring in the game. It really did. It's how the New Jersey Devils won so many Stanley Cups in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Like, they had that delayed forecheck, and I mean, granted, you know, they did have a good team. You had Patrick Elias, you had, you know, Marty Brodeur in goal. That's not going to hurt. So, yeah. But honestly, that delayed forecheck, it was kind of like how the Pistons in 2004, nobody could score on them. And you had these games that were like, you know, 86 to 82, and everybody was like, boy, that was boring. But I guess the Pistons are awesome? Question mark? Yeah, that's how it was back in the day. Anyway, so predicting where the NHL would go, there is no offside at all. I mean, granted, there's still offside in hockey, just not the 2-line pass. And that is so nice, because I've gone back and played like NHL 2002, NHL 2004. I still have those discs, and I have an XP computer, so I can play those kinds of games on it. And I've gone back and played it, and I'm telling you, like, it is so frustrating, the 2-line pass rule. It just stops the action right when it gets exciting, every time. And so when the NHL made that change, like, scoring has been up by quite a bit. And that's great. That's what fans want to see. It's not what goalies want to see, but, you know, you deal with it as you can. Anyway, so, yeah, the realism in this game is excellent. And it is so much fun to play. The CPU is really hard, and a lot of people have said this, and I will say this also. Have a big lead going into the third period if you're playing against the CPU, because the CPU turns it on in the third in a big way. I went into the third tied and got doubled up on. I lost badly, embarrassingly. I was hanging with the CPU the whole game until got to the third, and then it was all over. So, honestly, this game is probably a lot better played against another human player, but that's fun also. So, yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Anyway, people, yeah, Blades of Steel is excellent. And what am I going to give it? I'm going to give it a 8 out of possible 10 fat Mario hockey players from ice hockey. That's right. Stare at the difference. Behold how different this game looks as compared to Blades of Steel, the superior product. Anyway, people, that's going to do it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.